Do you ever wish you were a time traveler and could go back in time and change the past? If so, and if you are a time traveler, this video is not for you. You don't need this grammar I'm about to share with you. If you are not a time traveler, come with me on this journey where we talk about the third conditional. Hi, I'm Phil. Thanks for joining me today as I share a few English tips just as I would share with my students face-to-face here at Mayak in the Czech Republic. So there are actually 4 different types of conditional sentences in English. 0 conditional, 1, 2, and 3. So that's 4 altogether. And if you've made it this far, that means you've made it to the end. This is maybe the most difficult type of conditional sentence, the third conditional. In third conditional sentences, we talk about how the present, this present situation, could have been different if something had happened differently in the past, but it didn't. There was a condition in the past that could have happened, it was likely enough to happen, but something didn't happen in the past. So this type of conditional can actually leave us with some regrets. It's about something that could have happened in the past, but it just didn't. So we could even say that these conditions in the third conditional are impossible conditions. They're impossible, even though they were somewhat likely to happen, they didn't happen. And unless you are a time traveler, it's not possible to change the past. What happened in the past is in the past, and so this condition is just impossible. We can talk about it, but we can never go back and change it, unless you travel through time. So how do we use it? We have 2 clauses just like usual. We have the if clause, so we have if plus had plus the past participle. Then we have the main clause. In this case, that's modal verb plus have plus the past participle. And when we say modal verb, we're talking about words like might, could, would, should, words like this. So the if clause here talks about the thing in the past that happened that could have been different, but it wasn't. So we can think about the if clause sort of as the past part of this third conditional. And then we can think about the main clause as being the result in the present. This is how life is now because what did or didn't happen in the past. So you can then think about the main clause sort of in a present tense sort of way. So let's practice a little bit. I'm going to explain a situation, a scenario, what has been happening, and then I'll give us a third conditional sentence to explain that situation. I'm an adult now, but I can look back at my schooling and I can think about how, I did not study as much as I could have studied when I was younger. I could have studied more. So I know also if that would happen in the past, if I would have studied more, the present could be different. So I could use a third conditional sentence to explain this. So I can say, if I had studied more in school, I would have gotten better grades. If I had studied more in school, I would have gotten better grades. Now let's imagine my wife and I are looking for a new house. We're looking in the newspapers and online. We're trying to find a good new house to live in. So we've been looking at different houses and we go to visit one house that maybe we would buy. And as we look at it, it all looks okay, except the kitchen. The kitchen looks horrible. It is really bad. We would not want to live in a house with a kitchen like this. So something would have to change if we would buy this house. So I can talk about this in the third conditional. So I can say to my wife, if we had bought that house, we would have had to rebuild the whole kitchen. If we had bought that house, we would have had to rebuild the whole kitchen. I live in a city here in Europe with good public transportation, but I also have to be careful about being at the right place at the right time at the bus stop. And if I'm not, I might miss the bus. And this is another situation it's great to talk about in third conditional. So I can say, if I had caught an earlier bus, I wouldn't have been late. If I had caught an earlier bus, I wouldn't have been late. I want to pause the grammar right now just to talk about how this is a great example of how grammar isn't just grammar. Remember, English is for communication. It's not to get grammar right. It's to communicate. And I'll be honest, as we talk about things that could have happened differently in the past, it can stir up some regret in you, even about simple little things. And so, as we think about that, don't sit in your regret. But do think about life. Remember, as we think about third conditional and things that we did in the past, things that happened in the past that we can't change, remember, we can still build a better future for ourselves. We can do things differently in the future. Yes, our present is different because of our past, but the future can be different. And those things in the past, they can be forgiven. Some of them can even be fixed. So don't live in the regret, but let the third conditional bring out some deeper things in you. Because I think English is such a great tool for helping us think about some deeper things in life. Because again, it's communication. Okay, let's get back to it. Modal verbs. I mentioned we could use modal verbs with the third conditional, and we use these often. But I want to give you an example, one sentence that we will keep the same, but I will change it and I will use it 3 different times with a different modal verb. And you can see, even just switching the modal verb each time, that it gives you a different type of sentence and it gives you a little different meaning in your sentence in the third conditional. So take a look at this. So I was at work today and I had a question to ask my colleague, but my colleague wasn't there. I couldn't see him anywhere. So I could say, if I had seen him, I would have asked him. If I had seen him, I would have asked him. Now, this is a great one, and when I use the word would, this tells the listener that it is certain. If I would have seen him, I would have asked him, 100%. Let's change it just a little bit. If I had seen him, I could have asked him. So now, I'm not sure if I would have asked him or not. If I say I could have asked him, maybe it's 50-50. I'm talking about the possibility of asking him. Yes, it was possible that I could have asked him, but maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have. And I could also say, if I had seen him, I might have asked him. I feel like the probability even went down lower with might. I might have asked him. It's possible, but not for sure. So this shows the variety we can use in our speaking, even just with changing the modal verb in the same type of sentence. You can have some variety even in that. I want to leave you just with one warning, one thing to be careful with in the third conditional, and that is we only need the modal verb, the would, could, should, or might. We only need that in the main clause. We don't want it in the if clause. It's quite a common mistake for people to enjoy using their modal verbs and they just use it everywhere in the sentence, and that isn't a good thing. If you use the modal verb would, we only want it at the end. We don't want it in the if clause. So I used the example earlier, if I had studied more in school, I would have gotten better grades. That's great. But I hear people sometimes say, if I would have studied more in school, I would have gotten better grades. We have double modals there. We don't want that. We don't need would in both places, only in the main clause. So the correct one is, if I had studied more in school, I would have gotten better grades. Another bad example with the house that I talked about, the wrong way would be, if we would have bought that house, we would have had to rebuild the whole kitchen. Uh-oh, we have would in both places. So better, the right one is, if we had bought that house, we would have had to rebuild the whole kitchen. Only one time, only in one clause. So I hope this video brought you a little help and hope, especially concerning the third conditional, and maybe with your own life, with a little bit of this thinking of the past. I think it's important. Remember, English is communication, and I want to teach you grammar, but I want you also to be able to communicate even deeper things with the people around you. That's very important in our life. I hope this was enjoyable to you, and see you next time.